Hello everyone. I wanted to talk a little bit about fan shrouds and the advantages that they can provide when you use one. This is one of the styles that I make. It's called I call it the Hurricane. It uses a 3300 CFM fan that I get from Flexolite, the Flexolite company, and then I hand form the shroud and weld and so forth to make it fit the radiator perfect. And basically I make these fit whatever radiator you currently have. So that's part of the gift of the whole thing, is being able to have something that actually fits what you got. So the other type is more of something that you commonly see out there, where a guy figures that he's built a car and everything, and he has a radiator, and the radiator needs a fan. And if he can put a fan on a radiator, then he is able to conquer the issue of heating on the car. But it's not really true, because it can do some cooling, but it can't offer him the maximum potential. So basically this type is again, you see this setup on cars, and sometimes you see a setup like this where the fan is on the front side of the radiator, which to me is a no-no. And I know guys have to do it because they don't have any room between the radiator and the engine. And I try to get them to maybe customize and make a little bit of room there, because fans work on the suction side best. So we don't want anything that inhibits the air from getting to the fan. Now all of this fan screen and everything going on, even though that's pulling air and blowing it through the radiator, if the fan's on the front, it's still not as good as a clean face on the radiator. That's what you want, like this. That's what you want. You don't want the air to have to fight to get to where it's going. So anyway, now this fan, of course, is not new stuff. This is all new stuff. But this is one where we replaced and put basically this style in somebody's car, but we replaced that. So we use it to train with and to learn different things. The problem with this setup is pretty simple. The fan, when it's on the suction side, the fan only pulls air through the footprint of the fan. This is all that gets air pulled through the radiator. The areas that you see here on both sides don't get any fan. And that's not good, because without a fan, it just can't, unless you got a lot of wind blowing in the front of the car or something like that. Sitting still, you're not able to pull heat. You're not able to pull heat through the core and dissipate the heat in the atmosphere like you do in the area where the fan is pulling air. So when you run the car and you feel the warm air behind the fan, that is heat that used to be inside the radiator. Now it's been with air flowing across the cores, the heat is being pulled from the water and dissipated into the atmosphere. Then the water goes down through the radiator, goes back in the engine cooler than when it came out. That's the objective. So what you can do to find out if you're, exactly what your setup is doing and how much you're not covering, the easiest way to do that is figure out the square inches of the radiator core. So to get that, we go width times height will give you that number. In this case, this is 21 inches by 18 inches. So you multiply the two together and you get 378. Now, the next thing we want to find out is what is the square inches of the fan. And everybody says, how in the hell am I going to find square inches on a round circle? Well, the formula for that is the diameter, which is straight through the center of any portion of the circle, the diameter square, or times itself, times 0.7854. So this would be a 16-inch fan. So the formula and the way you figure that is 16 times 16 times 0.7854. That gives you this number, 201 square inches. So when you take the 201 square inches of the fan away from the size of the core, what left over is 177. Now, when you figure a percentage of that, it's 47%. So that means that that fan is not cooling 47% of that radiator, which is almost half. So basically, you got a whole half of your radiator that's got no air coming across it unless you're going down the highway. And normally when you're going down the highway, you have additional air coming in, and to show the importance of the shroud and everything, what the shroud does is it allows the fan to pull through 100% of the core and basically makes the car think it's going down the road even when it's sitting still. So that's why your temperatures are always cooler going down the road, because air is moving through all of that core space. Now, sitting still, you have to rely on the fan to pull it through. So with the shrouded radiator, we still have the round fan, same size, 16-inch, but now we have a plenum that's made on here that goes all the way to the corners. Now this shroud will pull 100% of the core. So naturally, it's going to run cooler because you're pulling air through all of the core instead of half the core. That is the advantage. Now, we're going to turn them on. I have them both hooked up to the same box, which is a transformer that goes from 120 volts down to 13. 13 volts is what you should be seeing from your alternator when the car's running. So that's why. So 13 volts is normally what a car would be seeing. So we'll turn them on. Now we got fans going. Both fans are running. And then what we do is we take a little business card, and I even tape a little quarter on there to give the card more weight, so that it's harder to hold the card in place. So if we put this card in the center where the fan is operating, this fan is operating in the center, it'll hold it on there, just barely, nothing. I mean, it's not no big power, but when we put the card up in the corner, remember there's no fan. There's no fan in the corner. It falls right off. Now let's go do the other one. Now here's the one with the shroud. Same card, put in the center. Now here's the trick. When we put it up here in the corner, there you go. So this, in other words, convection is taking place in all of this core. All of it. Not just the little rounded thing in the center. So now when we turn it off, you can see there's no trick. This is not America's Got Talent. There's no trick here. This is just facts. So the way you have to look at it is, and the way I've been teaching it for years and years is the water in the engine goes through the engine block, then it comes over, goes through the radiator core, and then back in the engine. It's a closed loop system. So when the water can be looked at as a freight train, and the freight that the train carries is heat. So the heat is gathered in the water on the train. It comes out to the radiator, goes through the radiator, and that's where the train dumps the heat. That's where we want to get rid of the heat. So if the train comes into the radiator and it cannot dump all of the heat on the train, that means the train has to go back in the engine with a half a load on the train. So now it can only bring out a half of a regular load. Whereas the train in the shrouded radiator goes through, dumps all of the heat, goes back in the motor or the engine with an empty train and picks up a full load of heat and brings it back out. Whereas this guy here can only bring out a half a load. So you can see that that's why this engine runs warmer, because it can't get all of the heat out of the engine, because the heat can't be transferred into the atmosphere and rides back in the engine on the train, half of it. So that's basically the way I explain it. Now, if you can get rid of all of the heat, then you can afford to run the water through faster. And now the engine gets a cooler drink more often, and the engine is very happy and it runs cooler. So normally, if a guy brings me this setup right here, and I convert it over and build this setup, I can cool him down from 30 to 50 degrees at idle. And my dual fan setup can do even better. But anyways, that's how that works. And you can see that this is not a new radiator like the other one is, but you still get the idea of how it pulls air through, and you get the idea of how much is left over here that you're not using. So you're not getting, it'd be hell if you went to the bank with only half of your paycheck, So anyways, you want to get all you can get. This is what I make. This is the most popular. This is called the Hurricane. It uses a 3300 CFM fan and motor that I get directly from Flexolite, and I use that on both of my cars, my little Roadster and my Corvette. Both of them run in the 170 range all day long. So that's it in a nutshell for the Shrouds. And we'll come back and we'll do a little story on the dual fan. The dual fan setup that I make for blower cars or high horsepower with air conditioning, all that kind of stuff, is almost as different as this fan and that fan. It's like almost twice as good as the Hurricane. The dual fan is called the F5 Tornado, which we'll talk about that on a different video. Okay, that's Wade Mahaffey out.